So we'll go ahead and get started today and call to order our work session for August 28th, 2018. We have 4 items, one of which is going to be very quick. It was just an update, but just an update on our work plans. We'll do an update from the Park and Rec team, the Finance Department team, and the Police Department Chief will give us an update. And in terms of BOC work plans, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. At the 9/11 meeting, 3 documents that are going through final legal review will come back to us for adoption. The ethics policy, the conflict of interest policy, and the rules of procedures. Just little tweaks being made by the attorney. The conflict of interest is a new policy that came about as we were looking at how to enhance where we are. That also impacts the work that Commissioner Lee is doing on the board rules of procedure, so we're going to go back and look at how we integrate that into it and point to it before she then sends those out to all of you next week to solicit your input. We have to have those approved and ready for approval, so it goes to the attorney. Remember, we don't have a second meeting in September. At the October 9th meeting, as boards and commissions will begin their October work right after that. The speed interviews are next Thursday, September 6th. We have 18 candidates for 21 slots. One individual can't make it, Shane Frazier, but he's been on the Main Street Advisory Board in the past and has a resume to go with that. So Kelly Curry is working on how to when we can interview him. Again, we will have to go through the candidates and make some decisions that night, because with one meeting in September, we need to bring the candidates back for approval at the 9/11 meeting. So we start at 5:30 and we go till we end. As I said, we have 18 applicants for 21 slots. There's a couple of ways to address that I would throw out on the table, and we can resolve next Thursday night. Parks and Rec has 9 slots right now. We bumped that up from 7. I think we could bump that down. My personal opinion, we could bump that down to 7 and make it more manageable from a voting standpoint, et cetera. We bumped it up because when we merged 3 committees into one. I think 7 is a manageable number, and that would get us down to 1 extra. And we could look at an alternate from either the Planning Board or the Board of Adjustment as to whether or not we fill that, and then we have enough candidates for slots available, assuming they're all viable and valid candidates. And then that's the work in front of us. And just remember, if you haven't already introduced yourself, the board liaison roles start the 1st of October with the new chair, et cetera. My experience has been, I've sat down with the Historic Preservation Committee. They welcome the idea of getting consistent board direction. They seem to be taking this as a very positive move. So I think that's all good. So any questions about, before we go into Labor Day, all that stuff that we have to get done in the next 7 days after as coming out of Labor Day. So, all right, good. With that, Park and Recreation Department update. And this would be the time where you pick up the microphone. There you go.
Awesome. Hello again. We're going to go through a brief presentation about the foundation of our ordinances for the Park and Rec. As you see on the slide, we have only had ordinance for our downtown park and amenities. They didn't transfer over to our other active parks. So we took the year and basically got the foundations, and you have a packet in front of you basically explaining all the updated ordinances. This has also been vetted by our council, Mr. Buckley. He came back with no changes. So they're basic foundation ordinances for our upcoming, our park's existence and our future parks. So what I'm going to do is just go over a couple of the updated ordinances. But at the end, if you have any questions, please, you can ask them now, or if you can, get them back to me by the end of the week, so I'll have time to go back to Mr. Buckley for the September 11th meeting. That would be awesome. So again, we are updating across the board park hours. Thank you. And that talks about, when it's open and closed, and that's basically sunrise to sunset. And then we're talking about vandalism, and that's basically that's trash up to spray painting or messing up one of the park amenities. We're also talking about pets, and that goes along with our leash laws, and that also helps us up with our athletic fields, where we are having issues with pets running onto the field while there's play going on. So that helps with those issues as well. It also helps with solicitation, so our patrons are not bothered with people coming into our park space and trying to sell them items without having prior authorization from the department. Also talks about drugs and alcohol and tobacco use. We currently have our downtown park says no tobacco use, but it doesn't transfer to all the parks at this moment, so that would just update that. It also talks about our activities and athletic fields, just making sure that all the rules are applied for any future parks as well. And you'll see in there that actually coming from a park that had a water feature, I went ahead and put rules in there for that. So we're planning ahead as well. It also helps us with our shelter rules and procedures on that. That wasn't clear before, so it just basically cleans them up and gets them ready for our current and future parks. So this is setting the foundation for our department, which, as you know, that we're a pretty new department, and this is something that's just part of that progress. Do you have any questions at this point in time? Again, if I know this is a lot of information coming at you at one time. If you want to digest it, if there's anything that red flags you that I need to elaborate on, if you can get them to me by this Friday, that would be awesome. That way I can make sure that Mr. Buckley can get in front of him, and so we're ready for our next meeting.
So one of the issues I have when we provide feedback back individually is the reconciliation where there's a disagreement between board members.
Oh.
I mean, Commissioner Lee might have one opinion about an ordinance, I might have another, Mayor Pro Tem McMillan might have another, and you got three. Now, how do you bring those back to us to make sure we reach consensus as a board? Because we all look at it differently.
Totally. Would it be better in a group email that we set up that way so everybody understands?
That would be a meeting. We can't do that.
Okay.
Is there a reason you need this approved by the 11th?
Just because of there's rules that we have posted that are not enforceable. That's the reason why.
Are they being violated on a regular basis, what you're talking about?
So you're just like DOT. They put signs up that haven't been approved. I digress. It's just a sore spot in the county.
It's something that is one of those, over the past year, this is our cleaning up process, and we're just making sure that the foundation is set properly. So it's up to y'all's privy on what you would like to vote on it.
Here's an idea. That I know Mr. Buckley has done this with us before. It's presented. We could go ahead and adopt and then have the meeting after to make the quick correction, if there are any corrections afterwards. I think we just did that with one thing with downtown where we had an ordinance. we adopted it, and the suggestions then were
You might
discussed.
say you made an amendment.
And then we made an amendment to it. That might be a workaround to make sure that we all talk and we reach consensus, if you're okay with that.
I was going to say something. Yes.
Yeah, not to take
Okay.
anything for granted, but these are pretty
Pretty
straight
straightforward,
down
I
the
assume.
middle, so.
Yeah. But we can certainly provide feedback, and if there's a reason to have a meeting after that, we can, but given that Mr. Buckley's gone through it,
Yes.
we can make changes afterwards if we have to.
That's the,
Does that work for you?
that's the wonderful
Work for everybody?
outcome that can happen.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
One just quick question, though, because
Yes,
with
sir.
Nesbit with lights, so do you have a different hours for Nesbit? Is that covered somewhere else in here?
Nesbit's under the athletic rules,
Okay,
so that's separate.
okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
And it is 10 o'clock, just for public.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next update, Lisa and I are going to kind of walk you through our foundations of department and also our future planning for the department. Just to go over our mission and vision for the department, the basic is to give opportunity to our community through a gathering space, small groups, in a safe environment. And that's our basic mission and vision. Why do we have a Park and Rec department? In 2012, y'all had the foresight of doing a master plan then, and that plan basically stated that you needed a department. And through that, the department was formed in 2015 with a director, and then started with setting the foundations for a well-rounded department, which we are still working on today. We are to improve our athletic and leisure and events and cultural programming. And we also, at that time, brought in the event staff that was basically setting some recreational needs up to that point. A well-rounded Park and Rec department is considered of these 4 pieces: recreational programming, community events, greenways and trails, and facilities. Programming provides a social activity for small groups. That could be community partners with athletics. That could be community partners with teaching classes, such as our senior program, bringing in local artists. It also helps with fitness and education. So this is where you get to know your neighbor's name. This is the small group. Some other recreational activities that we hope to do in the future, and these examples are from other communities around our size, and they're small. They go in small groups and then activity groups. So you have summer camps. That could be sports camps, adventures, field trips, service projects, health and fitness, CPR classes, healthy cooking classes, yoga, small group exercise classes, homeschool program, which I know that we have a growing community in our area for that, teen programs, which actually is dear to my heart because it's a missed opportunity for us not to have some programming for them. And that could be programming like babysitting, health and fitness as well, teen council for our future leaders as well. Also with field trips, our adult programs, senior programs, we've had wonderful success with our senior coffee And with their educational, we have an educational program coming up next week with them, social programs, and then we would love to work into fitness and field trips with them. Partners are going to be a wonderful provider to help with discounts for our programs and to make it accessible for all. Like I stated before, we've started this year, which we've had awesome success with our senior coffee hour. It's the first Thursday of the month. We've already have seniors asking to extend that for at least another activity a month. So we're working on, looking into that. But we also started our fun days in the park, where we had, they were all free this summer, but we had community partners such as the Union County Park and Rec Department bringing out their nature van, the Union County Library. We had our fitness partners in town that came out and helped us in July for our fitness day and sports day. And then staff, getting them used to doing programming outside and basically playing games that unfortunately some of our children in our area didn't even know how to do a hula hoop, and that's really, really sad. So it's teaching them basic games outside and just having fun with everyday supplies they have at their house. Okay, Lisa's going to tell you about events, and we'll move on to our next subject.
Good afternoon. So why events? Community events are an integral part of the Park and Recreation puzzle. Though events existed first in Waxhaw before the actual establishment of the official Park and Rec Department, events were really our first recreational offering to our community. Yet events have a purpose that is much beyond just offering a recreational outlet for our citizens. Though creating happiness in our community is an important element of events, it helps create the sense of community among our residents and helps people to love where they live, work, and play. But primarily, events are meant to be an economic stimulus for Waxhaw. The Events Division was formed in 2005. There were 2 event managers before me. I came on board in June of 2010 to assist the then events manager, who now runs events in Rock Hill. The town manager at that time gave me the following goals for my position. Create awareness of downtown Waxhaw. Make downtown Waxhaw a vibrant center for the town by creating events that would make people living north of downtown to come downtown rather than heading to Blakeney or Ballantyne. Events were seen as and continue to be an economic development stimulus for the town. Events such as the Spring Festival, July 4th, Autumn Treasures, Fright Night, and Christmas bring people to our downtown area and give exposure to the downtown, which otherwise may not have been discovered. For that reason, all town events were to be held in the downtown. And I think we have accomplished these goals, and I and the Park and Rec staff take great pride in helping to create a place where people want to come and hang out with their family and friends. Events are part of the formula for recognition in the region. The company called NerdWallet, which is an American personal finance website that helps people make basically financial decisions by comparing products and communities. They ranked in 2015 and 2017 Waxhaw as the best city for young families in North Carolina, and part of that reason was for family-friendly events as well as the quality of our education. And this year, actually this Friday night, we will be accepting the 2018 Great Main Street Award from the American Planning Association. And for that reason is because we have created a diverse retail shops, award-winning eating and drinking establishments, and cultural events in the downtown. So our events create social equality within our community. Our events try to create an environment in which all citizens, without regard to their social status or how much money they make, they can come and enjoy and participate in. We provide a wide range of events that cater to all ages, income levels, and abilities. Just as a note, as a mom, I've been to festivals with kids in tow who are begging to play one last game or to ride one last ride, and you feel awful when you just can't afford to do it. And I hate to see that disappointment on the families' faces, or worse, have them not attend because they can't afford to pay for events at our festivals. So for that reason, we have strived to make most of our events remain free to attend, thanks to the investment of our town leaders. Events also help the town build partnerships with our business community. Events are our primary outreach to our business community, and they provide a way for the town and the business community to work together to help promote Waxhaw. Events are also a way to foster a positive relationship between the town and the business community. Our downtown businesses are great partners with our themed events. If you look up at the slides, we have pictures of ribbon cuttings. The second picture is Alicia Campbell from Atrium Health, who is one of our many business volunteers at our senior citizens Christmas party. And then the two pictures on the end are Eight Legs Gallery and Provisions Waxhaw, who participate in Fright Night in dressing up and promoting the downtown to the families. Yeah, go back. Events also generate an economic return for our business partners. If they don't see the cash registers ringing during event, they should see recurring sales after the event as people visit downtown and see a store that they otherwise might not have known existed. There are a couple of examples I can give you. There was an article a few months back in the Tri-W News on the Cupcake Queen. As you know, she opened up a store downtown. She sold 100 cupcakes within the first hour at our Fright Night event, and that encouraged her to open a brick and mortar shop in our downtown. Pelican Snowballs, which has locations throughout the area, has chosen Waxhaw as their home base because of our community events and the assistance that we provide to help them promote the business community. And I'm always approached by businesses who want to be located in the downtown because of the activity and the exposure that they can receive there. Finally, community events provide what Roger Brooks is a renowned expert on tourism, downtowns, and destination marketing. He often counsels Main Street programs throughout the United States, what he calls a third place. We're creating a safe gathering place for our citizens to come together. Events make our downtown that community place for our citizens, and they build a sense of community pride. That's what we feel events do for our community, and we are open to hear what you feel events bring to the community.
I have a question for the mayor. Saw you on TV. Do you think the fact that the TV station and perhaps others have come to you because of what they're hearing about Waxhaw's events and so forth? I believe that. Is that something you would confirm or change?
First of all, WBT was set up by, I was just asked to be there. I didn't have anything to do with that. And Amy, I was prepped, okay?
I should have told me you weren't.
The flip side of that is Fox 46 and Jason Harper met him at National Night Out and got into a discussion about the positive stories that need to come out more, and we got into a text discussion on that weekend, and they showed up at one of the events to publicize it. Those are good things. I think what you have going on is that there's enough fake news, negative news, et cetera, that they're always looking for good, they're looking for good things to talk about. The discussion with WBTV off camera was all about, gosh, Waxhaw's a community. So it's a bigger message that they're looking at. They see the breadth of the community, not just one thing or one entity. I don't know if that answered your question, but I filibustered for 3 minutes, so how's that?
Okay. No, the only other thing I'd like to add is that what you do makes me proud. I mean, people that I talk with, when I have relatives come here, they've heard about some of the things going on ahead of time, and they like it. So thank you. Keep it up. Get better. And keep making us proud of you. Thank you.
So
I have more. I just wanted to offer that opportunity for you to.
well, since you offered the opportunity, we're going to keep rolling here, okay? So I think you guys have a great track record. That's not a debate point. I think where I am personally is the conundrum of downtown. We've created a vibrant downtown, and so we have people coming downtown on non-events and congesting the area. We're going to have the apartments up in a year. And I think we're at a inflection point where it might be time to look at how do we want to revamp our event strategy to fit where we are going to be in a year or two. Because I don't see how we can keep overloading downtown. It's bad enough going on Bivens and having people cut across the historic Ventures property and take you as target practice, as they tend to be doing now because of some of the congestion. The apartments go up and they start constructing on some of the other things, and there's just no place to go. I know I'm having conversations with Ginger Snap. You know, they're wondering when are they tapped out with downtown Waxhaw because they've had such good growth. And what would they do about that? And those are discussions that they have to evaluate. That's where I think we are. It's proud of your past, but now where are we going with the future? That's just my personal opinion. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but we're there, I think.
I agree in living downtown on Main Street. I get the brunt of a lot of it, but I love the events. I go to all of them. But I think with looking at the budget this year and looking at going forward, how many, we have 19 events total, is that correct? 17. So I think it's important to take a good look at what are the most important ones, which ones bring more people in and more visibility, and maybe look at cutting some of the other ones out that are not as successful as the big ones.
And I would agree. I would like to see some type of cost-benefit analysis, how much we're spending for each event, what are we taking in from vendors.
Show you
how
that
much
on the,
business
I'll show you
revenues
that on the
we-
next slide.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll wait then. That's a good question.
Even as far as agreeing with both Commissioner Burns and Westlake, consolidation can, possibly be done with some of the events and consolidating them. And have you looked at the concept, or do you know of the concept of having, what was it, the street fairs or the open street concept, where people can come in and also participate without having sales or merchants there, but it's a more community gathering and activity type of event. There's information with Charlotte, or things that we received when we went to some other activities, so that we can pass along to you as well.
Great.
That's at
Thank you.
a minimum cost.
So obviously, events come come with an investment in our town. So what is the actual investment? And this slide breaks that down for you. The revenue that is listed, we have just shy of $50,000 annually that we receive through sponsorships, vendor fees, and donations. And that revenue does not take into account any in-kind donations that are received. So the Senior Citizens Christmas Party, for instance, has all of the food donated from area restaurants. At 250 seniors at $10 a head, you can figure that's about $2,500 that we're receiving in kind from those restaurants. Likewise, entertainers and contracted services that we have to put on events give us discounts in their fees. I work them hard so that we can try to stay within our allotted budget. The YMCA donates their time and equipment for some of our events, and those are just some of the examples. We're always striving to try to offer the best quality event possible while trying to keep our costs down. If I had to make an estimate, I would probably say that the in-kind contributions probably total around another $10,000 to that revenue that we don't have to spend. And that does not take into account any of the many volunteers that give of their time that we don't have to pay staff to be there for. On average, the larger scale events are 65 volunteers. Our expenditures last year were just over $200,000. But I would like you to remove the Christmas lights expense from that, because I don't feel that the Christmas lights are actually an event expense. I think that you would hold the Christmas lights. I think that you would put the Christmas lights up whether there was an event or not. They were originally part of the Main Street expense when I ran both Main Street and downtown. And then we hired Kurt. It just kind of flowed over back into my department because I was the one that was responsible for getting the lights installed. So if you take that out of it, it's about $167,000 that we're spending. So your true cost minus our revenue is just over $100,000 to orchestrate 17 events.
Can I ask you, what are you including under expenditures?
Everything to run the special event.
Are you including staff overtime,
not staff.
police overtime, those costs? Because those are part of the event costs.
Our staffing is part of our budget. Under staffing, so you can't count it twice.
But I'm saying if you have to pay someone overtime to man an event, that cost is generated by the event.
And we have an overline budget number in our budget.
Okay, so, but this number doesn't show me the true total cost of an event, of events. This doesn't include any of those additional superfluous
It
costs.
does not have staffing in there.
Okay. Can you provide us with those numbers, what you spent on overtime, and perhaps get together with Chief and find out what the police overtime was for events?
Our staffing, or is our staffing line? It's part of our job. So, for example, Lisa and Miss Amy's job is to prepare and get the events ready. So that's their job. So
Okay.
that's their salary.
Okay.
So let me ask a clarification question. You use, I don't know what you call it, comp time? If they work extra hours, they can accumulate comp time, take time off later. It's
Later.
not that they get an overtime check, correct?
That's part of it, yes, sir.
Okay.
But there is, the overtime, Miss Lisa, is 4,600 and change.
Okay.
That was part of our budget
Okay.
for overtime. But again, we budget for that, so that's overall department budget-wise. So I just don't want
You don't have a
think
way to
that we're-
separate it out for what was overtime originated by events staffing?
That is their job, though. So Lisa's and Amy's salary is this.
But you're saying there's an overtime line as well, where they,
We do for extra, if there's extra time, because as you know, we still work a 40-hour week and then have to work the whole weekend kind of deal.
I'm just, when I consider the cost of an event, I want to consider the whole picture.
But again, that's our salary.
I
guess I'm
understand what you're
confused.
saying, but I think maybe what we're looking for is if there was not an event, how much money did you save if you don't do the event and this event in salaries and police overtime and cost? So if you take that event away, how much would you have to spend?
They're not looking for an overall number, but a breakdown per event maybe as to how much in overtime or cost is being allotted for each person or police officer that is manning that particular event. So for Kaleidoscope or Autumn Treasures or, Christmas, how much staffing do you have? And in that staffing number, what is the number that you're allocating for overtime or costs per person for those events?
That's what I'm trying to get at, such that if that event didn't happen, that overtime would not be generated, that cost would not be generated. Right.
So we're going to go into some of the recommendations that we were asked to kind of put together, and it'll tell you about how the prep time and the length of the event will play a role in those staffing costs.
Okay.
Not going through events per line item.
The big events are.
I can get to that, yeah. Okay. So I was asked to evaluate our various events and make recommendations for the board's consideration. So I offer a few here for you. The Kaleidoscope Spring Festival we've been hosting now for 5 years. It used to be an identical event to our Autumn Treasures event, vendors, music, Kid Zone. In 2013 and 2014, we made a decision to do a 2-year transition to move it from that vendor fair to an art festival. So it took us 2 years to make that transition. In the last 3 years, it has been a full-blown event that promotes all forms of art in our community, from performing to visual arts. We highlight local music talent. Many of the dance studios, middle school, high school theater groups perform on stage. We showcase over 300 pieces of children's art from area schools, and we have a juried art show and art for sale to attendees. Unfortunately, we have not seen a growth in artist sales and lower attendance numbers at the event. And with the TAP grant that is possibly scheduled for spring of 2019 for road and sidewalk improvement, we would recommend temporarily placing this event on hold for 1 year and reevaluate its makeup to appeal to a larger portion of our population. We would have feedback from our master plan survey, and also surveys that we have been sending out to the downtown businesses to find out what would appeal to them. So we would have that information back, and that would give us a year to evaluate it. Your thoughts on any of that?
If we were to agree to suspend this event, the cost of that event, would you then reallocate that among other events, or would you put that into savings?
We would like to recommend that it gets placed into developing her recreational programming, the teens, the teen programs, the summer camps,
Okay, and that
senior programs.
that brings me a question about your slide that said affordable programming for citizens. Do you mean affordable for the citizens to pay a fee to attend, or do you mean affordable for the town to foot the bill?
A little bit of both.
A little bit about the combination. Okay, thank you.
July 4th. July 4th parade will be a 30-year tradition in 2019. Unfortunately, it has not grown over the years, and even with the extensive recruitment efforts, believe me, we send out emails, we make phone calls to past participants, to area businesses to see if we can get them to participate. It is still half the size of our Christmas parade. To bring it up to comparable standards will require hiring talent, which we do to some extent, but with a limited budget. Probably $3,000 right now is what we spend on talent for the parade. And the big problem is that the schools aren't in session. There's no marching bands, and it's noticeable to the public. If you're out on social media, you'll see that I always get dinged on July 4th, but there's really nothing that I can do to make people participate. The beach party and concert in the afternoon is traditionally held from 4:30 to 8:30. It's traditionally very well attended. We tested the elimination of the beach party downtown this year. We moved the concert from downtown to the Food Line and parking lot. Kurt went around to the downtown businesses after the event And the downtown restaurants reported a 30% decline in sales from last year because we moved the concert and the beach party out of the area. We also saw a lower attendance at the concert and the fireworks this year. We all know that the fireworks location also has a limited lifespan. It's right where Waxhaw Parkway will eventually go through, and the fireworks has the highest staff costs. Actually, July 4th has the highest staff costs because of the parade and the fireworks. We have a lot of police overtime. So possibilities, keep it as is, return the beach party downtown to bring the downtown sales, business sales revenue back up and participation numbers back up. Host just the parade. My suggestion for years that I've been here is that I would love to move the July 4th parade to a different day, different holiday, perhaps Memorial Day, some day where the schools are in session and you can have the marching bands available. We have 4 patriotic ceremonies that really don't cost us a lot of money, but I don't want to make the decision on which patriotic ceremonies to cut. So I have a hard time deciding which one is not important to the community. But if you did a parade on Memorial Day instead of a July 4th parade, perhaps that would be something that might be entertained.
Can I make a comment? Memorial Day is a solemn day. It's a day for remembering those who lost their lives. Veterans Day is a day for celebration. Memorial Day is solemn, and it should stay solemn. And I really don't think our military would appreciate a parade of jovial celebration on that day. I think it strikes the wrong note.
Okay. Veterans Day? It doesn't
Veterans Day
have
is
to be
meant to
Memorial
be
Day.
celebratory and upbeat.
Okay.
It's too close to a
Christmas
parade.
parade.
I'm not saying that's the right day to do. I'm just saying of the two, Veterans is the one that's supposed to be upbeat. Memorial Day is supposed to be.
Or maybe we just have one parade and not 2. I mean, these are just recommendations for you to think about and give us your thoughts back. We have the option of keeping the fireworks going until the space is no longer available for that launching site because we know it has a finite end, or we eliminate the fireworks altogether and say that last year was our last year and move on.
Do we have any alternative sites that we've considered?
We have looked at 4 alternative sites, none of which will work.
So it's pretty much there, or we have no other suggestion?
Did
Yes.
that include one of the high schools?
We looked at Cuthbertson High School, the grounds of the Queens Cup, Cane Creek Park, Nesbitt, and I think we also looked at the museum, but that wasn't big enough either. There just isn't any room for it.
Was Marvin Ridge one of your options? Did you talk to them?
Did not talk to Marvin Ridge. I think the problem with the school system is that we're going to have to go to Union County Public Schools. If they say yes to us, then it opens the door for them to say yes to all the other communities, and I just don't see it happening. It would be an awesome spot. I mean, I would love to have the people in the stands and shoot the fireworks off like they do at the Knight Stadium, but I just don't see it happening.
It's worth a shot to ask, right?
It is worth a shot.
I moved here from up in Denver, North Carolina. They had it in their high school, so.
That is something that I believe the board, someone from the board would have to go and talk with the superintendent of schools. I think it needs to elevate to that level. We asked at the local level with the principal of the school, and they pretty much said that July 4th weekend is the only weekend that their custodial staff has off, and they are not interested in having, they have to, by their insurance, have somebody on staff. Autumn Treasures, Grillin' and Chillin' Barbecue Cook-Off. We experimented last year at the request of the Main Street Advisory Board and the downtown businesses to put a third stage south of the tracks last year to see if we could get the crowds to patronize the businesses on the south side of the tracks. It did not see any benefit at all. We have eliminated that for 2018 for a cost savings. Between the cost of the stage, the sound technician and the sound equipment and the bands on stage, we can save around $6,000 over a 2-day period. into the future, if we're going to continue to hold events, I really would recommend that we just buy our own mobile stage. The highest cost, honestly, of our entertainment is the stage rental and the bands on stage. You would have a 5-year return on investment if we use that stage for all of our events, and if you allowed the stage to be rented out for private events in other municipalities, you'd see a return on investment much sooner than that.
What's the cost of buying the stage?
Between $50,000 and $60,000. Autumn Treasures is our most well-attended event. We see over 10,000 people over the course of the weekend from Friday to Sunday. We currently bring in about half of the cost, half of the revenue to run the event. That is really limited because of the amount of space that I have. I can only fit 30 teams, barbecue teams. I could try to expand it, but that would require the use of 2 additional church parking lots and an agreement between them, which is all doable. And the other option is just to eliminate the grill and chill and cook-off altogether. But in my opinion, that's what makes this event unique, and it makes it a regional event. We have barbecue teams that come from Tennessee, Virginia, Georgia, and they patronize the downtown. They love Maxwell's, they love Mary O'Neill's, so I know that they do patronize the downtown. Some of our smaller events, Easter extravaganza, I feel many churches and HOAs are already meeting this need. Memorial Day, it is our highest attended patriotic ceremony. Jammin' by the Tracks concerts, the citizens were very vocal to us about moving it from weekly to monthly concerts. We only do it the first Friday of 4 months now rather than 10. 9/11 Patriot Day. I don't want to touch that one. Fright Night has become a town favorite. Last year, the town was bustling with parents and kids all dressed up in costume, and the businesses all dress up, and they have a costume contest and competition among the businesses. It's just a town favorite. Veterans Day, and then the Holiday Festival of Lights and Christmas season carriage rides has become a holiday regional favorite. When I first started in 2010, I had 100 people show up at that event. And now we're close to over 5,000 people that come. And last year, I think we downscaled the park, what we offered in the David G. Barnes Park, as far as carnival games and stuff. And I could hear people buzzing, "Oh, I thought it was bigger last year. Did you think it was bigger last year than this year?" And I'm like, "Oh, I hate to hear that because people love to come, and they come continuously every year." Senior Citizens Christmas Party, 250 attendees. Downtown businesses are very helpful in the restaurants and helpful in doing that. And then the Wreaths Across America was actually an event that was requested by Marion Morton, our cemetery manager. She has always for years wanted to put wreaths on the graves of all of the veterans in the community. And there's over 200 of them in our local cemetery, and that's part of the Arlington National Cemetery Remembrance. So we're part of a national remembrance on that day. So some of my observations for you, our team always tries to do the best costs and to keep our expenses down. We did begin to experiment with the elimination of some of our events. We did decrease the Jammin' by the Tracks from 10 to 3. We eliminated the beach party. And we have received feedback from citizens and businesses that they did miss them both. I'm just being honest. Senior Citizen Christmas Party, as I said, has all the food donated. And we're actively, currently right now, seeking input from the downtown businesses on the impact of the events on their sales, their exposure, and their return visits. And honestly, I'd love to hear from you on what your vision and goals are for events going forward. Like I said, when I came in on 2010, I had a set of goals and marching orders and what I was supposed to do, and, times change. I think we've fulfilled that. I think we have an awesome, active downtown, and people know that it's there, and they love coming down. I just would hate for it not to be that way because we ignore it. And finally, if the board does recommend that we reduce events within the budget year, We would like to recommend that we do put the money towards Park and Rec programming. The Park and Rec staff, event staff can spend some time helping Dina plan and schedule the summer programming for the kids, the tweens and the teens, and health and fitness for the whole family. Any comments on any of that?
I think it's a very, very good first step. If you do an analysis, which you have, now we have that information, and I think it's now up to all of us to pick, do we want this event or not? How do we go about finding more sponsors? Do we seek a site for fireworks? All those things. But thank you for the analysis. That's a very good start for us.
Thank you.
I appreciate the report. I would say I'm personally open to cutting some of those that you saw where participation has gone down, since we actually have a higher population now and yet participation's going down. Those types of events obviously aren't popular right now, and are we going to be open, maybe not necessarily cutting events, but maybe evolving into some different types of events? Right now, Food Truck Fridays are popular, or the open street festival type of thing that Charlotte's doing is kind of a new upcoming type of event. If we could look at maybe evolving into something newer, might be a way to go too.
Well, I thank you for what you did. I think we're at, again, I said it earlier, I think we're at a point where we have to evolve, take a strategic approach, and just kind of pause, take your expertise and say, what's the future event program going to look like? How are we going to drive community pride? What events are for placemaking, or do we need anything for placemaking anymore because downtown has established itself? The one I struggle with is delivering economic benefits because they're bustling downtown. So I think we have to look at that. And I've sat and talked to a couple of business owners. We'd rather you not have events at times because it takes away from the parking. They can't get to my place. I mean, you can't satisfy everybody. You're in a no-win. But I do think there are things there that we could do. The kaleidoscope, I get it that it's down, but the one thing that we have is local culture and heritage. So how do we step back and develop a strategy that is what is down our community, our local culture, our local heritage? I'm kind of at a point where we know what's going to happen downtown. I'd like to see maybe a pause and you got to continue. You're re-engineering while you're doing things, but hey, come back with a set of recommendations about we're going after these 4 or 5 things. This event looks, here's our strategy for trying to drive community pride or what the heritage about the veterans. You already have that one. You don't want to, personally, I don't think you want to touch that one at all. I mean, it's so integral. I think economic stimulus, economic vitality benefit, I think that's one we have to look at and kind of step back. And maybe that's where we get some of the community partners involved. I'll tell you this much. Mary O'Neill's knows how to throw a St. Patrick's Day party in the corner lot. We didn't need an events team. Might have needed a few of your folks to help out, and they teamed with Dream Chasers and Provision. You couldn't find a place to eat anywhere. So is there something to learn there where they drive it and we support? I don't know the answer.
I think we're moving towards that. We're getting there. We're getting there, and I'm happy that we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. They're going to do another one in September for, what is it, Oktoberfest. And I'm going to be there instead of working. So that's
my point.
That's great.
Develop that out a little bit and bring that back. You've got the data now.
Well, the great thing is that we have that lot there to rent out, and I've been talking to Dina about renting it out more to community partners like that can run their own events. I mean, that's what I don't want to see stop, is events happen in the downtown, because we've all been to downtowns where they've all been boarded up, and I don't want that to happen because we ignore them. That's just my concern.
But many towns that I've been to, like you said, they're sponsored by the businesses, and they step up and they're happy to sponsor it because it brings people in and they make money. and we don't have to spend money.
So rather than asking us which event would we like to tweak, what would you come back with? Could be a rhetorical question. How do we evolve the event program to something that shows this growth in community pride, placemaking, et cetera, as well as your subject matter expertise, and here's what we've learned over 10 years. Do this, don't do that kind of thing, and this is the budget that goes with it. Back to the questions that came, it's going to cost this much to do it. Et cetera. I would love for you guys to bring that kind of back to us.
And we've talked about this because we've actually, over the year, just me coming on board, it's basically what is the goal that we are setting up for Waxhaw. So what's your end goal? It could be several, but what do you want it to look like? And we can adapt if we know where we're going to be. It's basically what is your 5-year goal of what you want the community to look like? And we need that direction from y'all because.
So, okay, I'll throw one at you. I want an event program that drives community pride. Okay?
Okay.
That's part of the open street concept. If you look into that a little more, it drives community pride. It gets sponsorships from the community itself. It's not a selling event. It's not for vendors. It's for community to come together and participate, to demonstrate that pride, to set up things within that street focus, area for people to mingle with each other. They can visit the local restaurants on the outside, but there's no selling within that community street area. It's just participation, say, from the hospital or Novant Health or from Mary O'Neill's for you to see what we have or our heritage, to put paintings or murals or something out, or kids' art or function and activities, but there's no selling and vendors in there. You're getting sponsors and people to just help put together that community pride within that street section and have neighborhoods come in and just interact and mingle with each other. So that's part of that. If you look into that concept a little more, you'll see that that's something that is a little more feasible maybe and doable, for this town as well.
That's an awesome goal. But is there any other goals that you would like? Because we're coming at it from like the whole community. So if that's our main goal, we'll provide that. Is there any other? There's no economic goals involved? Because that's in the beginning. That's what she was charged of doing. So is that continuing, or is that, is it more, because I'm passionate about programming, that small group. Get to know your neighbor by their name. So.
Are you asking just for events or for Parks and Rec as a whole, or what are you asking for?
Events is Park and Rec.
Yeah, I'm asking, are you asking specifically an events goal or a greater goal?
A greater goal.
Okay.
Because
I'd like to see us open some of that 90-something acres of inactive parkland. Any of it.
Well, I think what you might be getting at is, as you said, when these events started years ago, it was to bring people to the downtown area to promote the businesses in the area. Now, downtown is thriving on its own. So just as I thought it was great that you moved the beach party to the Food Lion Shopping Center, just because it then highlighted some of those businesses that aren't downtown. Those restaurants don't get kind of the activity that the ones downtown do. So do we need to even look at this anymore about bringing people to the businesses downtown, or is this more about just bringing community together? And
Well,
I mean, that would just be, I think, where we need to define the goal.
or if it is for economic driver, is there another area in town that needs the economic driving more than downtown?
that's totally open
These are
to
things we're all going to have to think
Or
about.
is your goal, I guess, to bring people from outside of town to this one-time event where they're going to spend their money and then they go away and they don't come back? Or is it, like Steve said, Mayor said?
All right.
That's an
Mayor
excellent,
Steve said. Yeah.
that's an excellent point. And
So
because-
what are you trying to do? 4th of July brings in a lot of people from outside. They come, they sit, they enjoy, they spend one time, they go away. They don't come back for another year. Or do we want to bring in our goal to bring the community to 15,000 people in our town, our taxpayers in?
So when you go out and research events, there's 5 things that event programs are really driven to when you look at event master plans and strategy plans. Community pride, placemaking, delivering economic benefits, celebrating local culture, celebrating local heritage. I don't know, I'm not as close to it as you are to say what's the cost-benefit analysis of events that could align to each one of those. But to me, a starting point, those are 5 goals. Lisa, to your point, you guys were definitely chartered with the economic benefit to get some vitality downtown, and you did that. There's no question about that. You've done the community pride part of it through the senior luncheon all the way through the Christmas, well, what do we call it now? I know it was holiday festival lights, it was the 12 days, you know, all that. I think we've ebbed and flowed on the culture and heritage. On the economic benefits, I think we're in a transition downtown, and then you wrap around that. Downtown, to me, is getting constrained. So what are we placemaking now? So
Can you define that for me? That placemaking? That
create
it's
an
not a
identity.
term I'm used to.
Well, they use it in Main Street.
Creating a third place,
Create a-
place where they'll hang out.
Okay.
Yeah,
So your first place is your home, your second place is your work or school, your third place is your hangout place.
Okay.
right. It's, you know, like 12 Days of Christmas did that. People came downtown. They had a reason to come downtown 12 days in a row. And I know we changed the name and all that. I think you need to guide us a little bit. If those are overarching areas, what can we effectively do in your estimation?
Well,
You don't have to answer-
traditionally, when you're looking at return on investment on events, you're looking at bringing in people from outside your community because you're bringing in additional funds to the community that wouldn't already be spent. Like your local people that live here already go to Maxwell's and Mary O'Neill's and all the other restaurants in town. It's bringing in additional people, the tourism element, that you really brings the return on investment on events. That's the traditional way to analyze an event.
Right, so take it, and this isn't your event, but I'll turn it over to the chief. To me, National Night Out created some community pride. We got 6 or 7 neighborhoods with dozens, and in Millbridge's case, over 100 people out there talking to all sorts of different law enforcement, not only ours, but the sheriff's department, the Secret Service, you name it, they were out there. We got Hillcrest out. To me, that's community pride and community development in a different way. So there's things you could possibly do in the neighborhood. I don't know what they are, but that's an example of one that maybe community pride needs to be attacked differently than we've traditionally done it. I don't know.
I think your park and rec programming, the recreational programming that Dina talks about, is what is going to bring that community pride to the local neighborhoods. It's the smaller groups, it's the smaller programs, not the large-scale events. The large-scale events are meant to bring tourism to the area and to help ring the cash registers of the people in town. That's what they're meant to do. The larger scale events.
Yeah.
So you would like us to bring back recommendations, or will we hear back from the board on kind of your thought process of where you want us to go?
I think both of those things can happen. I think if you come back with recommendations, we'll think and we'll each have our comments and.
Send to you, the two of you.
Yes, please.
I think where we are is we're in a interact. Let's vet this thing and continue to refine it as a team. We've got a lot of good data. We know we have some constraints. We know where Waxhaw is going. We can try to, you're the experts and you can bring it back. We can say where the break point is. I hesitate for you to be asking us to design events. That could get real, yeah, good, shake your head, no. That could get a little dangerous. So I think we need to keep it at that goal level and say, hey, very candidly, this event, this is what these things are designed to do. And here's the return to that audience, if you will.
Okay, I can do that.
I kind of feel like they did make some recommendations of
did.
what to cut, so I'm not sure why we would need to come back and necessarily talk about that, other than if we want to go ahead and do that, or obviously wait till the survey comes back and see how the people feel, but.
She did make recommendations, but they also asked for our goals. And we don't have goals, we've never given them goals, so they're making recommendations in a vacuum. I understand the dilemma that they're up against, and so what I'm trying to get to is, so, okay, we started with some goals here. How do those things line up to that, and what are your thoughts there? It had nothing to do with the cuts. It's they're operating in the dark. I'm just, my opinion. Right, yeah, that's right, and so you're going to get it.
Dina, can you send this to us, this presentation? Can you send that to us? Because I definitely want to look over, think about some things, and get back to you both with some recommendations. I think that's important. Those that don't need to, then they don't have to.
She didn't go through the full thing.
Okay, team, I'm going to breeze through the rest of the presentation.
Well, wait, hang on a second. Commissioner Westlake, you're saying, why are we putting it off? What do you think we're putting off?
Well, she's asking for our guidance now, I'm assuming, as far as goals, and why are we just not discussing that now? Why are we having to wait for another meeting to discuss that?
So I laid out 5 goals. I don't know how the events map to those 5 goals. It's as simple as that. And just like to have that ongoing discussion with it. I don't, if everything is lined up to.
Well, I think it's fair to say that my goals were to bring economic stimulus to the downtown, and that may not be the right goal anymore, or may just be a portion of the goal. So what I'd like to do is come back with some goals for you to think about and see if you agree with them, and then we can certainly look at all of the events again and see if they fit those goals.
I think that's a great idea.
I think that's a great idea, too, and that would give me time,
Yeah.
personally, just to go back through these slides and really soak all this information in that you're kind of throwing at us, and give me time to really consider it.
And as far as your cuts that you suggest, I mean, I think if you guys think that's the right thing to do, well, but you kind of know what the goal, the overarching goals are. If you feel strongly that's in the best interest of Waxhaw, I would look for you guys to work with Greg and say, hey, you know.
Yeah, I'll say again, I think this was a really good first
Yeah.
step. And I think the fact that everybody's getting ideas, do we want it to be wider? Do we want to change the view of Main Street from Main Street to include Route 16 all the way up to Puritan Town Center? You know, that's the kind of thing, those are the goals
Yeah.
that we need to come up with. But thank you again, this is a great first start. Now we know where it is, so we'll come back.
I would throw out too is not just define the goals, but then let's put out there if there's anything that's a sacred thing
Yeah, definitely.
that we're not going to touch. Let's be clear about that so that we can take those off the table, whether they fit into a category or not. But I think everybody said, you know, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, there's certain things that we're not going to touch. We may do them differently, but we're going to have some sort of event.
Any other questions? Okay. The next part of the presentation talks about our facilities. And basically, I've gone over facilities in the past, but just to give you a recap, so we're all like on the same page. So facilities, park facilities are basically our welcoming places and our gathering places. Next. These are our active facilities at this moment in time. And of course I can go into like what every place has, but we're doing some renovations to Nesbitt and to Town Creek at this time. So we're doing some extra amenities there and to our downtown park. Our Town Creek, we're getting our shelter and our playground, and hopefully in the very near future we'll have our ribbon cutting for that. Knock on wood, the slides will be here tomorrow, so we're very excited about that. The dirt is moving at Nesbitt. Hopefully in the next week we'll have our footers, so we're moving right along, and December we'll have a grand opening for that as well. And we had the wonderful opportunity for our skate park to have some new amenities there through a grant that we received, which is awesome because it's just straight up grant money, no extra from us, to do some erosion control and some shades. And of course our partnership with the YMCA, we're working diligently to get ready for our fields. That's going to bring 3 new soccer fields to our area, plus a shelter and more parking. Our inactive areas, we have land all around town, which, you know, I'm ready to build a park. So we are excited about having that opportunity and the spaces. Greenways and trails. We just actually won an award for the planning on the Carolina Thread Trail Suspension Bridge, which we are very excited about. And then that partnership, which I would love to do more partnerships in the future for with other municipalities. In this case, it was with our cousins in South Carolina. Future connections, we're working on the back end of Nesbitt coming up Town Creek with the Millbridge community. So hopefully that would be accomplished in the next year. So that will bring all the way from South Carolina through the Thread Trail all the way up to Prescott neighborhood, and hopefully future for Prescott commercial area. And then that'll tie into our Waxhaw fields. We are still with the strategic master plan. We're going to get an update on the greenway system with that plan, so that will help us with future planning as well. Okay, said a lot really fast. Realistic goals. We're going to have to do some hard choices to build for our parks and trails. We need large amounts of money at a time to build these facilities. There's only a few foundations and grants that give large pots of money, so I just want to make sure that we're realistic about that as well, and they do require matches in majority of the cases. I'm all about going out for future funding and foundations, but that takes time. And then with the federal grants, it is a higher cost of administrating, so just have to weigh out the pros and cons that we would bring to y'all to see if that's what y'all want to do. So for future, is debt services, bonds. So it's just one of those things that they're going to be hard decisions, but know that the Park and Rec team is ready. We 100% ready to go, and we want to just express that we're ready to get that foundation for our community. And we appreciate y'all's feedback, and preach team spirit all the time. They probably sick of me saying it, but y'all are part of my team, and I just want y'all to understand that, we're here to help build our community, and with y'all's support and guidance is really appreciated.
Will you be instituting a Friends of the Park group like a lot of the cities around us have so that we can explore private donations? And when we had 900 some people say they wanted a park, let's give them a chance to put their money where their mouth is and raise some funds.
I know that we have one of our citizens that are talking with us to maybe start that entity.
Okay.
We're always open for that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Concerns? I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up was Lisa, and as soon as she saw the mic, she left. There she is.
Nick sent a text message that told me to hold this 6 inches from my face. So. I don't know if it's on. Is it on? Okay. Well, good evening. My stuff is not near as interesting or as exciting as playing in a park, but so I'm going to talk a little bit about our fiscal year that just ended June 30th. Any of the information that I share tonight, I just want everybody to know that it is a draft. The financial statements have not been audited, and any numbers that we discuss tonight are subject to change, and in fact, since I printed this, they have changed. So we're still making closing entries. The auditors should come later in the fall, and once they come, we will put our financial statements up on the website like we have in past years, but that should be a couple months from now. I want to remind everybody a little bit about how municipalities account for things a little bit differently than a business would. We're not making a profit. That's not our goal. Our goal is to provide services. And so our accounting is governed by Government Accounting Standards Board, which is called GASB. So that is a totally different kind of accounting. We use funds to separate different functions. So our general fund is our operating fund, and each other fund is for a different purpose. For example, we have the rental fund where we rent out a building. We have some capital project funds for projects. Each of those different funds has a different budget and has its own set of balancing financial statements. So I just want to remind everybody of that, because when we were talking in the budget, sometimes people would make suggestions. Some of the citizens said, well, don't do this or that, but that may not help you lower your tax rate because it may be over here in one of the restricted funds. If you decided to cut Powell Bill paving, for example, you're not going to be able to lower your tax rate because Powell Bill paving is a totally different pot of money. I think one of the slides I had shown at budget time was the little buckets. They're all little separate buckets of money. So I just want everybody to kind of remember that, because we're going to have kind of a confusing slide here next. We did a lot of changes to our financial structure this year. We made a lot of corrections and improvements. Basically, we restructured the accounting system to provide for better transparency and accountability. When I first got here in December, I had difficulty figuring out how much was left for each project. I really even had trouble figuring out what all the projects were. They were all commingled. Inside the general fund, the TAP grant was there, cemetery was operating, a lot of the police restricted money was all in the general fund. The POW bill was in the general fund. Those are restricted monies. We can't operate on those monies. So, but that was all intermingled in there. In the capital project fund, for years, the board had, so to speak, earmarked money for all these different projects, but I couldn't find those monies. There was just a big pot of money. We did have two funds, the rental fund and the technology fund, that were separated inside of our own financial system, but then the auditor came in and he even put all those into the general fund, which made it really confusing. So I spent a lot of time kind of untangling that, and I brought to you guys pretty early on some capital project ordinances, which you all adopted. And so we did a lot of budget amendments, and we separated out all of those funds. So this is kind of what it looks like now. So when we look at what the financial statements are going to look like whenever they get published, they're going to look completely different than that budget that's posted on the website. The general fund is now all by itself. It is the operations. That's where all of the departments' operating costs go. That's where our taxpayer money is. The other funds are special funds for different topics. The capital project fund got divided up into several different projects. Nesbitt Park, Town Creek Park, Waxhaw Fields, they all have their own pots of money. They all have their own expenditures. They all have their own fund balances. So that way, when the year ends, you'll be able to look at the general fund. You'll know how much money we have left of unassigned fund balance. It was really difficult when the year first started to figure out how much money did we really have. One of the biggest things was the TAP grant was in the general fund. We made a capital project ordinance for that, and we also set up some capital project ordinances for the grants, such as the CDBG grant and the Waxhaw Marvin grant. We separated out all those special funds that are restricted. Police has an Explorers Fund where the kids actually go out and do their own fundraising. They pay dues. So what was happening in that fund, those kids would do all that work. I think the year before last, they raised $4,000. Well, if that's all in the general fund, when the general fund closes, poof, their money's gone. So this helps segregate those monies that are raised for a specific purpose to stay earmarked for that specific purpose. So I want to go over just a couple of the big pictures, what's going on in each of the funds for the fiscal year ending. The capital project fund, what's left now is just Kensington. Everything else was extracted. So the problem that everybody's going to have is when you look at that, it says revenues and transfers in, expenditures and transfers out. Well, the capital project fund did not have $1 million of expenditures. It moved all of the money out, and so you'll see money in. If you look at the expenditures for Kensington of $1 million, and then you go up and look at the revenues for the Waxhaw Fields, that $1 million went out of the capital project fund and into the YMCA fund. And same thing is true with the other ones. Those transfers in came out of either the general fund or the capital project fund. So this first year of this kind of restructuring might be a little confusing. Now that we've gotten this over with, next year as we look at the financial performance, it will be much more clear. And now that we've untangled a lot of this, we'll be able to come and do some financial statements for you guys, and it'll make much more sense because it's not all mixed up. So just keep in mind that those transfers in and out are kind of going between funds. One other thing, so if you look at the ending balance there, so on the capital project fund in the Kensington fund, a lot of, let's see, about 467,000 of that fund balance is for developer funds that the developer has given us that can be used for various things kind of along that Waxhaw Marvin corridor. Let's see. So we have several grant projects, and I think you guys are pretty familiar with the TAP grant. One thing of importance to know about the TAP grant is that $250,000 of our match is Powell bill money. So we've gotten a transfer from the general fund, and we've gotten Powell bill money, and that's what that revenues and transfers in is. Bless you. So far, we've collected $113,000 of the grant money, and the rest is our transfers in. So whenever that TAP grant is complete, about 35% of the $1.1 million will be our general fund money. Oop. Okay. The police drug money is, we have two different funds. We have a federal drug fund and a state drug fund. Both of those, the chief has people who are very up on the rules. They have very strict rules of what they can and can't spend on that. That really isn't up to us to budget. We do budget for it just so that it can legally be expended, but they have really strict rules of what's allowed and what's not allowed. And the Police Explorers Fund, I think I explained to you, they're chartered by Boy Scouts of America, so those kids do a lot of raising their own money. They have a talent show. They also pay dues. So this helps make sure that they get to keep all the money that they raise. So then we have several special revenue funds. Special revenue fund is kind of a fund that isn't tax related. It's not tax revenue. It's for different things. I just talked about the Powell bill money. That's from the state. The technology fund is something that was started several years ago to help pay for the very high cost of credit card transactions. So $1 for every transaction goes into the technology fund. That fund balance that it has now is set aside to be used for whenever we have to replace the software, which is very expensive. The Powell bill fund, again, whenever you see those revenues and transfers in, they're going to be this first year kind of confusing. We did not get $931,000 of Powell bill money. That's the transfer from the general fund out of there of all the accumulated fund balance. It had about $500,000 of fund balance, so it had to get transferred in. And also, the Powell bill also transferred $250,000 to the TAP grant. To give you a little bit more detail on the rental fund, I believe we bought that property in 2012. That property has made a profit every year. It has accumulated so far $205,000. That money can be used for anything related to that property. On the general fund, the revenues came in really well. The collections for property tax, we talk about this a lot, but we have a really high collection rate. We have over a 99% collection rate, and that's really good. The higher the collection rate, that just gives us more access to the money that we are expecting. Interest revenue is really high this year. I'll explain that more in a little bit detail. One of the other really high revenues is building inspections. We had over $170,000 of an increase in building expenses. That's 20% growth in 1 year. So that's kind of good and bad. One of those things that we have to separate out now due to recent legislation is we're going to have to separate that revenue source out. So we're going to have to take all of the revenue and all the expenditures out of the general fund. So you won't see that revenue in the general fund next year. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that that'll be coming up in like September. Here's a little bit of history on the interest income. Whenever I got here in December, we did a lot of banking changes. In February, I came to you guys and asked you guys to approve some brokerage accounts. The state allows certain investments for municipality. It's very limited, but there are a lot of investments we can make that are much higher than having your money sit in the bank account. So we invested in some U.S. Treasuries and commercial paper in February, and in that 4 months we made $86,000 versus the $10,000 in the prior year. So we're doing well there. If you look at just the operating cost of the general fund and not all the transfers out, the general fund actually had a lower cost of operation versus the year before. And I'll go into a little bit more detail of why that is in a minute. A lot of people always ask, where does our money go? This is where the actual expenditures went. When we did the budget, we said, you know, this is where the budget was, but you got to remember this is not always what is budgeted is what is spent. Obviously, our largest function is police, and if you look at any of the other municipalities, police is usually always the largest function. Sanitation is 12%, public services is 10%, and then in administration, that is a lot of different departments all combined. That's the HR, that's the clerk, that's finance. Building inspections, 6%, and again, we're going to remove that from next year as well. I've kind of done a little bit of a summary of how each of the department came in after the year, and I divided it up to remind everybody that when we adopt our budget, we don't adopt it by department. We adopt it by function. So these are the functions of the budget that are under the administration. And you can see that all of the departments within that function did really well. In administration, there was some left over because we budget for contingencies, and we did not spend all of that contingency, luckily. Finance, there was lap salary. There was a whole year budgeted for my salary, and I was only here half a year. Community development is another function, and those are the 4 departments that are within community development. And again, engineering had an opening for the entire year, so there's a lot of lap salary. Planning had 2 openings for the entire year, so there's some lap salary there. Parks and Rec, we had some difficulty with that budget. Dina wasn't here when that budget was formed, and so there was a lot of things that kind of fell through the cracks as far as budgeting for her. Her cleaning expense wasn't even budgeted for the whole year. We kind of had to struggle to make some adjustments just to get through the year. Public services saved a lot of money, and one of the reasons why is that during May, the manager asked the department heads to try to freeze all of their spending. Parks and Rec, Public Services had some pretty large equipment that they had planned on purchasing that they had to postpone, which they have now bought in this fiscal year, which should pay for itself. They bought a machine that's going to do vehicle inspections so that the garage can now do our own vehicle inspections, which will save us $30 for every vehicle. But we did postpone those transactions to try to kind of offset some of the adjustments that we were knowing that we were going to have to make this year. We revised the budget a couple of times during the year to increase for the growth in the sanitation, and it barely squeaked by, but it did come in right at budget. Public safety includes both the fire contribution and then the operations of the police department. Police department also had an opening for the entire year, which contributed to the coming in under budget. So overall, the departments came in $631,000 under budget, which is primarily due to the openings and expenditures and the freezing of our operating expenditures for a couple months. Here's all of the transfers that we made out of the general fund. So again, whenever you look at the budget that's out there for fiscal year 18, it's going to look a lot different than this because we amended the budget several times. Here's how we amended the budget. We did it 5 different times. I came to you and we did capital project ordinances and set up some of those different funds. And I want to point out, I kind of forgot about when we were talking about donations. We have a donation for a caboose that somebody started. I don't know what the history of that is, years and years ago. So I just want to caution everybody to be careful when we talk about doing donations, because that $3,388.72 is stuck there. So unless I can figure out some legal way of getting that out of there, we have to keep that because somebody gave it because they wanted a caboose. So we have to be kind of careful when we start talking about giving donations, because once you accept that donation for a specific purpose, it has to be used for that specific purpose. So that is our very beginning budget was $10,968,693. Our ending but final amended budget is $11,898,427. So in summary, and I want to remind everybody, this is a draft. These numbers are going to be a little bit different. Our revenues came in under our expenditures by $391,000. That's a use of fund balance, but we budgeted for $350,000 of fund balance. We had an adjustment. Like I said, we made a lot of corrections and accounting restructuring. So in order to compensate for that adjustment, that's why the manager asked the departments to kind of cut their spending. So we kind of softened the blow a little bit of that fund balance decrease. I think we're still pretty good as far as our fund balance policy. The board passed a policy, I think in April, of a range between 30 and 40%. I think we'll still be safely in that range. We have a strong fund balance, and I think going forward, now that we've gone through all these changes and restructuring, the financial statements will be a lot easier to read. Another thing that we've got planned is we've got a website tool that we're going to launch hopefully in November, and it will give some comparisons of our town expenditures versus other town expenditures. Hopefully that will be helpful for the citizens and the board too, to see where we are. That'll help when we do budget, because that question came up a lot of how do we compare to other cities. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mayor, one thing I'd just like to say is thank you to Lisa and her staff for the tremendous amount of work that they've done to really restructure our foundations of our finance and accounting system, and to get it in a place where we can look forward and we can deal with a large number of capital projects. We can manage multiple projects and have confidence in our cost accounting and how we're addressing it. I think there's some great things that have been done in the last 6 months from her office to really get us poised for the future and provide that transparency and better accounting for the funds that we have and that we're entrusted with. So I'd like to say thank you to her and her staff for a lot of hard work.
Thank you.
Echo that. Thank you very much.
One thing I would note, we've made a number of big changes that relate not only to the accounting system, but actually to our auditors. So over the last year, the board has brought new auditors on board. Lisa has met with the auditors already, provided to them a lot of information of things that they'll see when they perform the audit. because we have restated our financials and we're doing them differently, we will have a prior period adjustment. So when the auditors come in and do their review this coming year or this year, we'll have a finding in our audit, but that's nothing to be alarmed about. It's something that we've brought to the auditors ahead of time before they get here in the building or in town doing the procedures that they'll do. So we know that there's some things that needed to be adjusted, and Lisa's been very diligent at working on those. So we've got some additional policies that we're going to bring to you, but I think we're well down that path.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Chief, can we take a 3-minute break and then? Are you going to give us a financial update?
We'll talk a little bit about finances. First thing I want to do is address some things I've kind of been getting crucified on social media here lately. When it comes to the police department, let me address those, and then I'll go right into the year-end report, and we'll rush through this because I know you need to be done by 6 o'clock. A couple things that have been mentioned that a lot of people don't understand. One of them being our vehicles. Those vehicles have a lifespan of about 5 to 6 years that we use them. They usually get around 120,000 miles on them when we replace them. And Todd's crew will do a grading on them, and we'll go through the list and see what is nickel and diming us to death, what's not safe to drive anymore. Last thing we want to do is have our officers driving vehicles that just aren't safe to drive anymore. And if they're starting to get close to being dangerous or nickel and diming us to death, then we put them on gov deals and auction them off. So the next question was, why are we driving Suburbans? Well, we're not. We're not driving Suburbans. The only Suburban that's in the parking lot belongs to Homeland Security. I have nothing to do with their budget. We do have several Tahoes, Ford Explorers, and some Dodge Chargers in the fleet. The Dodge Chargers, in this day and time and climate that we're in, we're having to carry more and more equipment, and we're having to deal with more and more rough situations. Not as much as a lot of other jurisdictions and agencies are, but you'll hear me say this time and time again, there's no such thing as Mayberry anymore. And we have to be prepared for whatever is thrown our way. It wasn't but a year ago we arrested a guy with the FBI that had ties to ISIS. We could be the next community that has a school shooting. So with that being said, we preach training, and we want to give our guys the equipment they need to be able to handle any situation that's thrown at them. So having said that, these Dodge Chargers and the Ford Tauruses are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's not adequate for us to carry all our equipment. So we're going to a 6-cylinder twin-turbo Ford Explorer, and then the lieutenants and above drive the Tahoes. They're 4-wheel drive, so that in the wintertime, if we have inclement weather, your police department can still be out there patrolling. The SUVs actually are having less trouble with them and nickel and diming us with repairs. I think every Dodge Charger I got, and Todd can verify, the radiator fan has gone through the radiator when they're out on traffic stops. So it's just getting, then there's the back end of it. When we go to auction these off, we're getting a lot more for these SUVs than we are the Dodge Chargers. So we're you know, I hate to use the term that we're making money, but we're getting a lot more bang for our buck by getting these. And by the way, the gas mileage on them, we're getting, you know, I hated it when the Crown Vic went away. That was the ultimate police car. But we're getting 2 miles more to a gallon with the SUVs that we got than we were with the Crown Vics. The vehicles that we get, the Tahoes, the Tahoes and the Explorers and even the Chargers, we're not paying for them what you all would pay for them if you were to go out and buy them for your family. A Tahoe, if you were to go out and get it for your family, would be $60,000, $70,000. We paid $36,000 for ours. So having said that, again, we're getting more bang for our buck and getting these, and we're actually getting a lot of benefit in the equipment that we're carrying out of them and in inclement weather. So any questions on the vehicles? All right. The next one is facilities. Why does the chief have the Taj Mahal? Well, when I first took over as chief, we were in what is called the meeting place now. It was a little 2-room office building that every time the train goes by, the popcorn would fall off the ceiling onto my desk. The detectives were downstairs, and every time we had a heavy rain, they were standing in 6 inches of water, which caused a black mold issue. So they moved us over to the
Pizza Hut.
Yeah, the Pizza Hut, where the Pizza Hut is now. And we grew from there from 1 storefront to 4 storefronts, and was paying rent on each and every one of them. I'm not exactly sure what we were paying in rent on there, but it was a good bit. So then they found the building here that was going into foreclosure and renovated it into the police department that you see now. I'm not exactly sure on the numbers, but I'm pretty sure that Stallings has a building with half the square footage and paid a little more than what we paid for this. So while we do have a nice facility here, one, it's a recruiting tool. Two, we're getting very good use out of it. The other question was, why aren't we sharing it with Town Hall? Well, we are sharing it with Town Hall. As you can see, you're here today. Town Hall has access to our gym facilities. You have access to the conference rooms. Planning board, other committees meet in here. The fact of the matter is it wasn't designed to make a town hall police department building here. And in fact, several years ago when we first come in here, town hall had some mold issues and they had to move in here temporarily. And all we got was complaints. Whenever we made a good drug arrest, there was headaches and people were getting hungry, and there were all kind of things happening when that happened. Then we had a murder suspect that we had to bring up through here and interview, and kind of wigged some of the ladies out a little bit. So it just wasn't very conducive to have both here merged together. The building wasn't designed that way. And in fact, the way we're doing it now and sharing it is a little bit of a burden for us because, what you don't see behind the scenes during the week is, in the day and the night, is we've got informants coming into the building. We've got rape victims that are coming into the building, kids that have been sexually assaulted. They don't want a bunch of people other than the law enforcement that they're dealing with to see them when we're dealing with them on a daily basis. So that is the reason why we can't share the building any more than what we are. But, we are always open to try and be as gracious as we can to share the facilities. We've had several awards banquets in this room. Like I said, we've had several of the committees meeting here, so it is being shared the best we can. The other thing is staffing. I'm down 3 right now. And so some of the numbers that were looked at were the pay and the benefits for the staffing. First thing you should know is I can't just go out, nor do I think you want me to just go out and hire anybody that goes out there and applies to make a police officer. I've worked too hard to get the reputation of this department to be where it's at from where it was to go out there and just hire anybody. I will not settle just because I need to fill a position. So when I go out to set out to hire somebody, it could take a year to fill a position because I'll pass people over that have applied that just don't fit in to what we're looking for in a Waxhaw police officer. The other thing is the pay. The sheriff has made it perfectly clear that if you're not going to pay your officers when he needs people, he is going to poach those officers and take them. He said so publicly. So we have worked hard to get the pay up to where it is, and we're still not up to where a lot of the agencies are in this county. The sheriff's office, Marshville and Wingate, both start their officers out at $40,000 a year. We start ours out at around 38 for a rookie officer that has no education, no experience, whatever. Now, we factor that in. If we get an officer that does have that experience, and we put them along the career development plan and get them up there in money. And that's not a bad thing either. We don't want a whole police department full of young officers. When I leave here, I don't want a young department being left behind. I want to have a good mixture of experienced officers and rookie officers to make up this department. This department is the highest liability that you have in town. So when we are looking for good candidates, we want to pay them, one. Number two, we want to spend the money on training them. I push train, and education. So we make a well-rounded officer when we're here, and I'm proud to say that since I've been chief since 2006, we've had one lawsuit. That is unheard of. normally, like I said, the police department is your highest liability, and you get numerous lawsuits. I may be cursing myself tomorrow, but as of right now, we've had one lawsuit, and they didn't win it. So that's something to be proud of. So the other thing is the benefits. And it's not just the police department. When you're looking at who you want to be town employees, you want to get the best of the best. We ought to be out there. You know, I told you what the sheriff said, but I have the same philosophy. If I can poach someone away from the sheriff's office that's going to make a good Waxhaw police officer, I'm going to poach them away from the sheriff's office if I can. So, you know, the benefits that we have right now are good. You know, I would hate to see them cut in any way. I'd like to see them get a little better. We had one that we were actually poaching from the sheriff's office, and because of the spousal insurance coverage, the county did a little better for that person than what we do right now. But for the most part, I think we're right there. What we can't not do is readdress this every couple years and find out, you know, that we're way behind the 8 ball. So I think that pretty much covers it for staffing and personnel. Do we have any questions on that? All right, my next one is SRT. The question was raised today over the SRT budget. The SRT is a Special Response Team, SWAT team. We have that in the event that we have high-risk felony warrants that we serve. These guys are the police of the police. You know, they're specialized in training. We have a line item in that budget, I think it's 20-some-odd thousand, that covers ammunition for them to be on the range, shooting their ARs, other training that they go to, less lethal ammunition, less lethal firearms. You know, you and I were talking the other day, we had a kid who had a knife that wanted to commit suicide. I had it taped to his hand so that if we were to go and rush him, you know, he had a high chance of being able to succeed or hurting an officer. We have less lethal weapons now that shoot beanbag rounds. You know, we were able to use that and knocked him out of the position that he was in, and at that time we were able to rush him and save this young man's life. Anytime we're able to do a scenario like that, that's a positive outcome. So that's why we have that, and that's why we have that team in place, so that when it hits the fan, we've got people that are experienced, ready to go in and handle those high profile situations that are a little more risky than what the normal police officer is going to have to deal with. The next one is training, and I kind of touched on that before. Like I said, we are your highest liability, and if we don't train, that liability becomes worse. So, you know, as long as I'm chief, and that could end tomorrow, but as long as I'm chief, we're going to train, and get these guys educated to make the better officer that you guys can be proud of. And I am. I know I'm showing a little bias, but I honestly think that we have one of the best police departments in the state, bar none. And I've worked for several. I've got sons that work for several, and I'll put my officers up against their departments or the departments I've ever worked for. The other thing was capital projects. You had asked, you know, what the 5-year plan is for capital projects for the police department. I think right now, without knowing the future, is to continue replacing the vehicles, continue to grow as a police department in staffing. The town is growing. We're not able to stop it. I've given you a sheet at the back of your packet that says what the IACP recommends that you have. I don't necessarily agree with that number, but as you can see, we're well below that number. Basically, they're saying one officer for every 500 citizens. So if we're between 17 and 20,000, like I think we are, in my opinion, and we have 27 full-time officers, we are understaffed. And like I said, I don't think the number they're given is necessarily the number that we need to have. But if we stop growing as a department while the town keeps growing, we're going to be in trouble. We're able to kind of maintain and get the accolades that are given to us and being the second safest community in Waxhaw, although I shudder every time I see that, because the next year if we drop, I start looking over my shoulder wondering if I'm going to get fired. we are maintaining what we are doing. But a lot of that is, I believe in being proactive rather than reactive. So having said that, growing with officers, growing the department with the town, the vehicles, and then a big expensive body cameras. Before I come to you and ask you for anything, I always try to find a grant or a way to raise that money to get those. Case in point, the canines. That was $30,000 that we were able to raise through funds that the town citizens come up with, a golf tournament, and we were able to get those dogs. And as of date, your four-legged officers have made 29 drug arrests. They have done 9 tracks with 4 fines. One of the track was an assault with a deadly weapon. A father decided he was going to beat the pulp out of his wife and his daughter, and then as a coward went off and hid, and the dog found him in 20 minutes. So we're getting a lot of use out of the equipment that we're having. Like I said, we always try to find other avenues to try and get it. I feel like there'll be funds coming out for body cameras. Eventually every agency across the country is going to have them. I think they're a good thing. So that's where we're at. I hope that answered some of your questions. And then we can go into this report if you don't have any other. Good? All right. So we'll start with the mission statement. The Waxhaw Police Department is a part of an empowered by the community, is committed to a safe and peaceful environment, rendering aid to those in need, and protecting the lives, property, and rights of residents and visitors. We shall provide the highest degree of ethical behavior, professional conduct, and quality of police services. We shall actively seek to identify community problems and their solutions, enhancing the quality of life in our community. The Waxhaw Police Department shall provide honest, fair, and efficient law enforcement to all people within its jurisdiction, endeavoring to maintain the peace and tranquility in our community, vigorously pursuing and arresting known criminals in the town of Waxhaw and outside, by the way. There's been numerous times that Houck's called me up and said, hey, we got to go to Florida. We got a guy that is a felon that we've been looking for. They've picked him up down there. We got to go get him. Educating the public, citizens in crime prevention, encouraging them to take safeguards to avoid becoming the victim of crime. One of the biggest things we have in this town is vehicle break-ins. And it's all due to people don't lock their cars. They think that we are Mayberry. You know, they read the accolades that we get being the second safest town, and they don't lock their vehicles. And they leave guns, computers, money, everything in their cars, and then wonder why they're victims of a crime. So we're trying to educate the public more and more in doing that. Providing prompt and fair enforcement of local, state, and federal laws to all people. I think we come pretty close to fulfilling this mission statement. There's always room for improvement, and as long as I'm chief, we'll continue to strive to get better and better at that. So the next page, I'll go through some of the highlights. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just highlight it. You can read it later. And if there's anything in here that I didn't cover, you have questions about, and you don't have time to do it tonight, you can always reach out to Greg and give him any questions that you have for me, and I'll be happy to answer them. So we've grown from when I got here, an 8-man department to a 27-man department with 2 administrative assistants, and we have 3 unpaid reserve officers. And we're always looking to try and build upon the reserve program. Right now, the 3 reserve officers we have, one serves as a regular police officer and our police chaplain. So death notifications, counseling with the officers, performance marriage ceremonies, that type of thing. If we're involved in a shooting, they're there to kind of console the officer and the family, because it's not just the officer that has to go through that. The other one is a retired CMPD officer who comes in and does our computer forensic stuff. So if we're working a sex case and we have to look at the computer or cell phones, whatever, we have equipment that can go into that stuff, and he's skilled at using that, and we can pull up a lot of stuff like that, and in fact have made cases off of that. And then the other one is a police officer that donates his time to kind of help head up the Police Explorer program. So we're always looking for officers to do that, and they are required to donate to us 12 hours a month of service for us to hold their certification. An officer has to be part of a police department. We have to hold their certification, or after a year they lose it. So we require them to do 12 hours of service as a result of us doing that. We have approximately between 17 and 20,000 citizens in town in a 12 square mile area. We have 3 schools, local businesses, parks, numerous residents and neighborhoods in the area. We had a call volume this year of 32,278 calls for service. Now, not all of those, matter of fact, the great majority of them are, not very serious calls. And you can see in the next portion of it, 17,000 of them were preventative or extra patrols on individuals or neighborhoods, i.e. if we have a neighborhood that's got a lot of break-ins, we're concentrating our efforts in that area. If somebody has gone away on vacation, we'll keep an eye on their house. If somebody feels threatened and feels like they would like to have a little extra police protection, we concentrate our efforts in that area as well. So you can see that 32,000 is quite a bit, and it's gone up, I think, 3,000 from last year. And we're already, these stats are from January 2017 to December 2017. We're already seeing an uptick in the numbers in this year. 2 weeks ago, the detectives took on 14 cases in 1 week. We're getting a rash of copper thefts from new construction, the car break-ins, that type of stuff. 515 of those 17,000 calls that are preventive patrols are just to the downtown park. And that's just to that park that we can track because we got the cameras in there. And every time we got somebody in the park after hours, it notifies our officers on the street, and they pull it up on the camera, and they run down there to see if they catch anybody. It varies from vandalism to drug use to couples go down there.
Hanky-panky.
So in the next page, you'll see, the next couple pages, you'll see the numerous events that we work with. I think pages 3 through 8 has a list of the events that we're doing. And I'll not go through all those events, but they're not all the events that the event staff does. A good bit of it is stuff that we do. The National Night Out, the Citizens Police Academy. Again, we're out there trying to be proactive. Our biggest mission in making our jobs easier is building relationships with the citizens in this town. From the kids all the way up to the adults. I don't want a kid to have a bad attitude towards the law enforcement, nor do I want them to be scared to call the police if they need them. So we're out there building relationships with them both through the DARE program, all the way up through there. And you can look at the list of stuff that we're doing there as well. And the DARE program just doesn't end at the 5th grade. These guys follow those kids all the way up through high school and keep track of them. And it's all part of building that relationship. We've been able to solve a lot of crimes because those kids trust us. They'll call us and say, hey, the guy you're looking for is so-and-so. So we're being productive there in doing that, and I think we're making great strides there in building those relationships. So the investigations portion of it, it goes through here and tells you how much of the cases from that year are still active, closed, cleared by arrest, closed investigation only, closed leads exhausted. What that means is we take on a case and there just wasn't anything there that we can go any further with the case. They're inactive, unfounded, and there was 180 of those that the detectives took on last year. 200 Part 1 crimes. Part 1 crimes are your more serious felonies: your murder, your rape, your robbery, assault, burglary, larceny, auto theft, arson. We had 200 of those, and you can see where those are broke down in the numbers beside each column there. Part 2 crimes. Again, there's a list there: communicating threats, forgery, counterfeiting, criminal mischief, sex offenses, drug violations, which you can look next to drug violations, they're pretty high. And they're continually getting higher every year. We're in the middle as a county, as a country, in an opioid epidemic. And we're doing everything we can to be positive in that and educating the public. We have the drug box out front here where they can come and dispose of the drugs that they've got that they're not using anymore. That's how a lot of it is starting. These kids are going into the medicine cabinets and taking their parents' drugs. Sex offenses have started going up a little bit as well. So you can see the numbers there next to the Part 2 crimes. That's pretty self-explanatory. Traffic accidents. We had a total of 327 traffic accidents last year. 46 of them were possible injury, and 2 of them were very, very serious. Again, in the next 2 pages, it has a copy of the call volume, and we broke it out to numbers next to it. And you'll see the one that's 17,000. That is preventative patrols. That is non-reportable incidents that go out there, kind of like the skateboard park, that type of thing. And then lastly, awards and accolades. We received the Sharp Award this year from the state. Sherry Berry has awarded that. We're the first department to ever receive that award, and we are on our 3rd time receiving it. So it's something that we're pretty proud of. The grants that we have applied for last and coming into this current year now is $698,681. That's both to us. Some of that is going to upping the security in the Union County Public Schools, the locks, that type of stuff, training for active shooters. And then, of course, we got a grant for health insurance on the canines, and we got a bulletproof vest for the canines as well. And below that, you can see where the grants are broke down and the type of grants that they are. The next is just a letter from me to y'all explaining kind of just some of the stuff that I just went over. The next letter there is a letter explaining to you why we have take-home vehicles and why they're beneficial to the town. You can read over that. And then there's the IACP numbers. And then the last sheet is a breakdown of the police department and the different departments and the way it's structured. That's all I got. Questions for me?
Any questions for Chief? What do you need from us besides money?
Your continued support. I appreciate the support that this board gives us. The philosophy of community policing is that the police are the citizens and the citizens are the police. So we can't do our jobs without you and the good citizens of this town, and we do. We truly have some of the best citizens out there. I am the envy of a lot of chiefs in this area and the support that we get from our community, from the board. And so I greatly appreciate that. I just ask that you continue to support us. And if you see that we can be doing something better or that we're not doing it all, please let me know and we'll try to do our best to improve on that.
Well, thank you. And thanks to all the officers. Okay. That was the last item on the agenda, so it's a wrap, and we'll get back together in 15 minutes.